The Crystal Visitors Commander Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation deck window, watching the stars drift past like scattered diamonds. The exploration vessel Prometheus had been humanity's farthest venture into deep space, a 5-year mission to catalog potentially habitable worlds beyond the Kepler belt. After 18 months among the stars, Sarah thought she had seen every wonder the cosmos could offer. She was about to discover how wrong she could. But the bridge alert chimed softly, its gentle tone contrasting sharply with the urgency in Navigation Officer Tom Bradley's voice. "Commander, you need to see this immediately. We've got multiple contacts approaching our position at impossible speeds." Sarah's boots echoed against the metal decking as she hurried to the bridge. The Prometheus crew of 12 had worked together for over a year, and she knew every nuance of their voices. Tom's barely controlled excitement mixed with professional concern told her this was no routine asteroid field or space debris. The main display showed a sight that stopped her breath completely. 17 massive vessels approached their position, each one gleaming like carved crystal against the black of space. The ships moved with fluid grace, their surfaces catching and reflecting starlight in patterns that seemed almost alive. The largest vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from end to end, its surface covered in geometric patterns that pulsed with soft, internal light. "How did they get so close without triggering our long-range sensors?" Sarah asked, settling into her command chair while fighting to keep her voice steady. Dr. Maya Patel, the ship's chief biologist and systems analyst, looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Commander, they didn't show up on our sensors because they weren't using conventional propulsion. Our computers are detecting some kind of space-time manipulation. They literally bent reality to get here." Communications specialist Lisa Park suddenly straightened at her station. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's using mathematical sequences we can understand, but the technology behind it is unlike anything in our databases." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that the next few moments would change human history forever. "Put it through, Lisa. Let's make first contact properly." The main screen flickered and an incredible being appeared before them. The creature stood roughly human height, but seemed to be made entirely of living crystal. Its body was translucent with veins of light flowing through it like luminous blood. Where a human would have eyes, 2 brilliant points of blue-white light regarded them with obvious intelligence. When it spoke, its voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Greetings, beings of the vessel Prometheus. I am Crystalline Prime Vorth of the Zeltharian Empire. We have traveled far to meet your kind, having detected your ship's passage through our outer territories. We come in peace and curiosity." Sarah stood, smoothing her uniform and feeling the weight of representing all humanity. "Welcome, Crystalline Prime Vorth. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We are honored by your presence and extend friendship on behalf of all humanity." The crystal being seemed to shimmer with what might have been pleasure. "Your species is new to us, Commander Chen. We would be grateful for the opportunity to learn about your people and your world. Perhaps we might send a small delegation to your vessel for closer examination and cultural exchange." After a brief consultation with Earth Command via quantum communicator, Sarah granted permission. The crew watched in amazement as a smaller, crystalline ship detached from the main fleet and approached the Prometheus. Dr. Patel met Sarah at the docking bay, her scientific instruments ready and her eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. "This is the moment we've dreamed of, Commander. Actual contact with an intelligent alien species. Everything we learn here will revolutionize our understanding of life in the universe." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and 3 Zeltharian beings stepped aboard. Each was unique in its crystalline structure, with different patterns of light flowing through their transparent bodies. Vorth led the group, followed by what appeared to be a science officer whose body contained swirling patterns of green and gold light, and a third being whose crystal form was shot through with silver veins. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus," Sarah said, gesturing toward the prepared meeting room. "We've arranged a comfortable space for our discussions." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Dr. Patel noticed how the aliens moved with perfect synchronization, their crystal bodies catching and reflecting the ship's lighting in beautiful patterns. They seemed fascinated by everything they saw, particularly the life support systems and the oxygen recycling units. In the conference room, Sarah introduced her key crew members. Dr. Patel eagerly shared her biological research, while engineer Carlos Rodriguez explained their propulsion systems and power generation. The Zeltharians listened with apparent fascination, occasionally asking questions through their translation devices. "Your ship is remarkable," Forth said, his crystal form pulsing with soft light. "The integration of organic and mechanical systems shows great ingenuity. We would be honored if you would share information about your homeworld and your species' biology." Dr. Patel activated a holographic display showing Earth in all its blue and green glory. "Our planet is approximately 71% water, with a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. The oxygen content is about 21%, which is essential for our metabolism." She noticed the Zeltharians' light patterns flickered strangely when she mentioned oxygen, but continued her presentation. "Humans are carbon-based life forms. We breathe oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Our blood uses iron-based hemoglobin to transport oxygen throughout our bodies." The silver-veined Zeltharian, who had been identified as their science officer, stepped forward. "Fascinating. Might we conduct some basic biological scans? Nothing invasive, simply atmospheric and metabolic. Readings for our scientific records." Sarah nodded consent, and the science officer produced a device that looked like a crystal prism mounted on a metallic base. As it began scanning, the device emitted a soft humming sound and projected dancing lights across the room. The crew watched with interest as it methodically examined each human present, then moved to scan the ship's atmospheric systems. During the scanning process, Dr. Patel shared more about human biology and Earth's diverse ecosystems. She explained how oxygen was fundamental to nearly all life on their planet, how it had shaped evolution over billions of years. The Zeltharians seemed particularly interested in humanity's relationship with their atmospheric composition. "Our entire civilization has developed around our oxygen-rich environment," Dr. Patel explained enthusiastically. "We've learned to harness it for everything from energy production to life support systems. It's the foundation of our existence." Scanning device suddenly began emitting a rapid series of bright pulses. The Zeltharian science officer examined the readouts, and Sarah watched as the being's crystal form flickered from silver to a deep, alarming red. Forth moved quickly to review the data, and his own luminous patterns shifted to match his colleagues. "Distressed coloration. Is everything all right?" Sarah asked, noting the obvious change in the alien's demeanor. Forth looked up, and for the first time since their arrival, his voice carried an edge of something that sounded like fear. "The scans are complete. We have gathered sufficient data for our preliminary analysis." The third Zeltharian, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, suddenly began pulsing with urgent yellow light. The being whispered something in their own language, a sound like crystals singing in harmony, and Vorth's form immediately shifted to an even deeper shade of red. "We must return to our vessel immediately," Vorth announced abruptly, his earlier warmth replaced by obvious distress. "There are protocols we must observe when encountering new biological forms." Sarah frowned at the sudden change in atmosphere. "Of course, but is there something wrong? Did our scans reveal anything concerning?" "Not concerning," Vorth replied carefully, but his crystal form continued to pulse with agitated light. "Simply unexpected. We must consult with our colleagues and conduct further analysis before we can continue our cultural exchange." As they escorted the aliens back to the airlock, Dr. Patel pulled Sarah aside. "Commander, something's definitely not right. Look at their bioluminescent patterns. That red coloration indicates extreme stress or alarm in most species that use light-based communication." Before Sarah could respond, they reached the airlock where the Zeltharians were preparing to depart. Forth turned back briefly, his crystal form now pulsing with rapid, urgent light patterns. "Commander Chen, it has been educational to meet your species. We will be in contact again soon once we have processed our findings." There was something ominous in his tone that made Sarah's stomach tighten with worry. As the alien shuttle departed, she watched it return to the massive crystal fleet that waited in the distance. Minutes later, the bridge erupted in urgent activity. "Commander?" Tom Bradley called from his navigation station. "The alien fleet is transmitting massive data streams toward the center of the galaxy. The signal strength is enormous, like they're trying to reach someone very far away, very quickly." Dr. Patel rushed to her instruments, analyzing the readings from the Zeltharian scanning device that they had been allowed to examine. Her face grew pale as she studied the data. "Commander, according to these readings, their scanner was specifically focused on our oxygen levels. Not just atmospheric oxygen, but the oxygen content in our blood, our tissues, even our DNA." "What does that mean?" Sarah demanded. Maya looked up with fear in her eyes. "I think they see something in our biology that terrifies them. Something about our relationship with oxygen that they consider dangerous." On the main screen, the Zeltharian fleet began to move, spreading out into a formation that Sarah's military training recognized immediately. They weren't preparing to leave. They were preparing for a blockade. The first peaceful contact between humans and aliens had somehow gone terribly wrong, and Sarah had the sinking realization that Earth itself might now be in danger. Whatever the Zeltharians had discovered about human biology had frightened them enough to call for reinforcements from across their empire. As more crystal ships began appearing at the edge of their sensor range, Sarah realized that humanity's greatest strength, their very ability to breathe and live, had somehow been interpreted as their most dangerous weapon. The Oxygen Revelation. 3 days after the Zeltharian fleet's arrival, Commander Sarah Chen stood in the Prometheus's science lab watching Dr. Maya Patel work with desperate intensity. The alien blockade had grown to over 40 vessels, their crystalline forms creating a glittering barrier around Earth's solar system. No human ship could enter or leave, and all attempts at communication had been met with silence. "I've been analyzing the Zeltharian bioscans around the clock," Maya said, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Sarah, I think I understand why they're afraid of us, and it's not what we initially thought." Sarah moved closer to the holographic display where Maya had reconstructed the alien scanning data. "Show me what you've found." Maya activated a complex, molecular diagram that rotated slowly in the air between them. "Look at this. The Zeltharians didn't just scan our biology, they scanned the very foundation of their own ship's life support systems. According to this data, they're silicon-based, life forms who require a chlorine-rich atmosphere to survive." "Chlorine?" Sarah frowned. "That's toxic to humans." "Exactly, and oxygen is equally toxic to them." Maya highlighted sections of the scan data. "From their perspective, we're not just unusual. We're living, breathing weapons of mass destruction. Imagine discovering a species that required cyanide to survive, whose blood was filled with deadly poison, whose entire civilization was built around manufacturing and spreading toxic gas." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. "They think we're biological weapons, not weapons. Something worse." Maya's voice was grim. "They think we're a plague species, engineered to terraform worlds by filling them with corrosive oxygen. From their scans, they can see that we don't just tolerate oxygen, we require it. We carry it in our blood. We breathe it constantly. We've even developed technology to produce more of it." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez's voice carried panic. "Commander, to the bridge immediately. The Zeltharian fleet is moving and they're not coming to talk." Sarah and Maya rushed to the bridge where the main screen showed the crystalline ships advancing in perfect formation, their beautiful, translucent hulls now pulsed with ominous red light, and energy readings indicated they were charging weapon systems. "They're targeting Earth," reported Navigation Officer Tom Bradley, his face pale. "Based on their approach vector and energy signatures, they're preparing to launch some kind of atmospheric attack on the planet." Communications specialist Lisa Park looked up from her station with tears in her eyes. "Commander, I've been monitoring their transmissions. I can't understand their language, but I've isolated some mathematical patterns. They're counting down to something. Sarah's military training kicked in as she realized the horrifying truth. They're not trying to invade Earth. They're trying to sterilize it. They want to eliminate what they see as an oxygen-producing biological threat before it can spread to other worlds. Dr. Patel's hands flew over her console as she accessed the ship's atmospheric analysis systems. Sarah, I have an idea. It's dangerous, but it might be our only chance to prove we're not the threat they think we are. What do you need? The ship's emergency chlorine supply from the water purification system. If I'm right about their biology, chlorine should be as essential to them as oxygen is to us. If we can expose ourselves to chlorine, demonstrate that it harms us while it helps them, we might prove that we're naturally evolved, not engineered weapons. Sarah understood immediately. It was brilliant and terrifying. That could kill you, Maya. Not if we do it right. Small exposure, controlled environment, full medical monitoring. But Sarah, someone has to do this. Earth has 8 billion people who are about to die because of a misunderstanding. 10 minutes later, Dr. Patel stood in the ship's medical bay, wearing a protective suit while Engineer Rodriguez prepared a contained chlorine gas release. The entire crew gathered around monitors as Sarah opened a communication channel to the Zeltarian fleet. Crystalline Prime Vorth, this is Commander Sarah Chen. Please respond. We believe there has been a grave misunderstanding about human biology. For long moments, only static answered. Then Vorth's crystalline form appeared on the screen, but his beautiful light patterns were now harsh and angular with what appeared to be anger or fear. Commander Chen, you will cease all transmissions and prepare your vessel for containment. Your species represents an existential threat to all chlorine-based life in the galaxy. We cannot allow your oxygen plague to spread further. Sarah took a deep breath. Vorth, please listen to us. We are not weapons. We are not a plague. We are naturally evolved beings just as you are. To prove this, we will demonstrate something that no engineered biological weapon would ever do. We will show you our vulnerability. Before Vorth could respond, Sarah nodded to Carlos, who released a small amount of chlorine gas into Maya's contained environment. Even through her protective equipment, Maya began coughing immediately, her eyes watering as the gas irritated her respiratory system. Watch closely, Sarah said to the screen. This is chlorine gas, which I believe is essential to your biology. See how it affects us. A true biological weapon designed to spread oxygen would not be harmed by chlorine. But we are, because we evolved naturally on a world where chlorine is rare and oxygen is abundant. Vorth's crystal form flickered with what might have been confusion. This could be deception. A trick to make us lower our defenses. Dr. Patel, still coughing but determined, stepped forward and removed her protective mask entirely. She took a small breath of the chlorine-tainted air and immediately began gasping, her face turning red as her lungs rejected the foreign gas. Medical technician James Wong quickly moved her to pure oxygen to help her recover. No weapon would design itself to be vulnerable to its target's life support, Maya said weakly as she recovered. Vorth, we are not your enemy. We are just another form of life that happened to evolve differently than you did. The Zeltharian leader's light patterns began to shift from angry red to a softer, more contemplative blue. Science Officer Keth, analyze what we have witnessed. Another crystalline form appeared beside Vorth, this one pulsing with analytical white light. Crystalline Prime, the human's reaction to chlorine exposure is consistent with natural biological incompatibility, not engineered resistance. Their distress appears genuine. Sarah pressed their advantage. Vorth, imagine if the situation were reversed. Imagine if you encountered a species whose blood was filled with chlorine, whose atmosphere was toxic to your people, whose technology was designed to spread what you consider a deadly poison. Wouldn't you be afraid? The Zeltharian leader was quiet for a long moment, his crystal form cycling through various colors as he processed this information. Finally, he spoke in a softer tone. Commander Chen, you are suggesting that what we perceive as weapons are simply the natural differences between our species? Exactly. Your chlorine-based biology is no more a weapon to us than our oxygen-based biology is to you. We're just two different solutions to the problem of life in the universe. Dr. Patel, having recovered from her chlorine exposure, stepped forward. "Vorth, I would like to propose an experiment. We have chlorine aboard our ship for purification purposes. We could create a small chlorine-rich environment chamber. If you would allow one of your people to remove their protective equipment in our presence, we could demonstrate that chlorine nourishes you while oxygen threatens you, just as oxygen nourishes us while chlorine threatens us." The suggestion caused visible agitation among the Zeltharian delegation. After several minutes of discussion in their crystalline language, Vorth made a decision that would change the course of both species' futures. "We will attempt this demonstration. But if this is a deception, if you are truly the biological threat, our scans suggest the consequences will be severe." An hour later, in a specially prepared chamber filled with chlorine gas, Science Officer Keth removed his protective suit. The crystalline being's light patterns immediately became brighter and more vibrant, his movements more fluid and graceful. In the chlorine-rich environment, he literally glowed with health and vitality. When Keth stepped briefly into the ship's normal oxygen-rich atmosphere, the effect was immediate and distressing. His crystal form dulled, his light patterns flickered, weakly, and he quickly returned to the chlorine chamber to recover. The parallel was unmistakable. Just as humans thrived in oxygen and suffered in chlorine, the Zeltharians thrived in chlorine and suffered in oxygen. Both species were natural, both were valid, and both were simply different expressions of life's incredible diversity. Vorth's entire demeanor changed as understanding dawned. "Commander Chen, we have made a terrible error. We mistook the beauty of biological diversity for the horror of biological warfare. Your species is not a weapon, you are simply another miracle of evolution." Sarah smiled, feeling the weight of potential war lifting from her shoulders. "And your species taught us something equally valuable, Vorth. Life can take forms we never imagined, can thrive in conditions we would find impossible. The universe is far more wonderful and diverse than we ever dreamed." As the Zeltharian fleet powered down their weapons and moved from blockade formation to peaceful escort positions, Dr. Patel began working on detailed biological exchanges between the species. The chlorine-oxygen divide that had nearly caused a war became the foundation for an alliance between two completely different forms of life. In the days that followed, human and Zeltharian scientists worked together to develop safe interaction protocols. They designed hybrid environments where both species could meet safely, and began planning for a future where biological diversity would be celebrated rather than feared. Commander Sarah Chen stood once again at the observation deck window, but now she watched Zeltharian ships moving alongside human vessels, their crystal hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. The universe had proven once again that the greatest threats often came from misunderstanding, and the greatest victories came from the courage to bridge the gaps between different forms of life. Humanity had not only survived their first contact with aliens, they had gained allies whose very existence expanded their understanding of what life could be. The oxygen that flowed through human veins and the chlorine that sustained Zeltharian crystal forms were no longer sources of fear, but symbols of the incredible diversity that made the universe a place of endless wonder and possibility.